Today we're going to be talking about some common APA style mistakes when writing a research paper. The first thing that we're going to discuss is the running head. You see how on the title page it says running head, colon, and then the title of your paper in all caps. The R is capitalized, but the H is not. On the second page and all pages following, you want to delete the word running head and colon and just have your title in caps as a header. Next is the proper indentation of the abstract, which actually means that you shouldn't indent the abstract at all. You see how the first line is not indented here. You also want to ensure throughout the paper to use clear, concise sentences. For example, if someone wrote, "The field trips that are shown to be most exciting to kids are those that are fun," you would want to shorten it to be something like, "Kids prefer field trips that are fun," where your point is clear and it comes across in a concise way. The next thing that can be tricky is the different title heads for each section of your APA paper, which ones to bold, which ones to indent, etc. On the page after your abstract, you're going to have your title, not in caps, centered, before starting your introduction. And then you're going to have the other sections centered and bolded, subsections under them bolded and left aligned. So you see materials and methods centered, bolded, then participants and procedure, which is underneath that, bolded, left aligned. Results, bolded, centered. Discussion, bolded, centered. And then your references page, the references is centered but not bolded. You also want to ensure to correctly format your statistics. Here's two examples of statistics in APA style. For chi-square, a chi-square goodness of fit test was performed to determine whether the 4 book covers were equally preferred. Preference for the 4 books was not equally distributed in the sample. Then you have the chi-square, the degrees of freedom, the end sample size. You have 2 decimal places, and the p-value is italicized, and since it's less than 0.001, you just say less than 0.001. For a t-test, you could say an independent samples t-test was performed to determine whether the intervention group performed significantly better than the control group. The intervention group showed significantly greater increases in IQ scores. You're going to want to give the mean with 2 decimals, standard deviation, 2 decimals. Then those in the control group, mean, standard deviation, comma, t, degrees of freedom, equals the value 0.2 decimal places, comma, p-value, p is italicized, equals whatever p equals if it's unless it's less than 0.001. Throughout the paper, you also want to be sure that you have the font consistent, except for within the figure where you're going to want to use a sans serif font. For your references, you want to make sure not to have references in the reference page that are not in the text, references in the text that are not in the reference page, but instead ensure that all references in the text are also in the reference page and vice versa. For formatting the figures, you're going to want to ensure that they're in grayscale and centered on the page, each figure on its own page. At the bottom, you're going to want to italicize figure, then the figure number, period. The figure title, period, a description of the figure. As you can see in these 2 different figures, they both follow those guidelines. Finally, for formatting the appendices, you're going to want to make sure that it says the appendix A, B, C, etc. first, centered, non-bolded, and then underneath it, the title of the appendix, centered, non-bolded.